Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Lubin, and I have the honor to serve as the Dean for the School of Continuing and Professional Studies here at UVA. And we're so excited to have you here today in our new space. For how many of you is this the first time you've been in this space? So this is wonderful. Our offices are on the third floor, and we were just chatting that after we have our double take, that we're happy to bring people upstairs to show you our space if you would like a quick tour as we are having reception afterwards. So we're excited to be here, and we've got many people online as well. So thank you for bearing the rain to get here today. So we are offering our school's very first double take, and this is an event where you will have the opportunity to hear from our students and our alumni, to hear their stories, to get a peek into their own world. And they've each chosen a story from their lives that they want to share with you today. So we're very excited to hear from them. There will be 6 of our students and alumni that will speak today. And really, storytelling is an art. It's really a fundamental human phenomenon where we can share our experiences in a way that makes them more engaging and more memorable. We can convey information that maybe is complex by relating it to something we could all relate to. And maybe most importantly, it helps us connect with each other to find ways that maybe you might not have thought about or known about just by interacting with someone in your day-to-day. So my hope today is that when you hear from the 6 of our students, that something will spark inside of you, that something will resonate, that means something for you. And maybe it's yourself, it's your story you'd like to share. So with that said, I'd like to start with John Kanye, who will be our first storyteller today. John, thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me back at UVA. My name is John Kanya. I graduated back in 2014, and I'll share with you some events that shaped my life. And so starting out, I was not a very good student. In 2nd grade, I was actually diagnosed with 2 learning disabilities, and the main one was an auditory processing deficit. And what that means is I would be given instructions in class, and I just wasn't able to process and quite put into action what I was supposed to do on that assignment and task. And so that made school really difficult for me. And from 3rd grade to 12th grade, I was actually in special ed classes. And starting at 8 in 3rd grade, it was really difficult because you were often separated from the rest of the students throughout most of the day. And so you could be, tagged as a lazy student or somebody that was dumb. And explaining that to other 8-year-olds wasn't easy. And going through school, I just didn't enjoy being there, except for recess. I like the social aspects, but so when it came time for me to graduate from high school, I had no intention whatsoever of going to college. I didn't think I was capable. And so growing up, I'd always loved working with computers. And so I've actually been on the internet since 1990. And decided that I would go and look to get some certifications and find a job instead of going to school. In 2001, I was absolutely blessed to get an internship on Capitol Hill at the Committee on International Relations. Changed the name, but I still use that name. And in August of 2001, I started there just doing IT. Now, obviously, this is a month before the 9/11 attacks. And so I was actually there, arrived a little late that morning, and I could see the attacks that had already taken place in New York. And so I go about my job that day. And then pretty soon after, you see that the Pentagon has been attacked. And so we get evacuated from the buildings. I was in the Rayburn right next to the Capitol. And as I'm walking through DC, I can see the smoke rising from the Pentagon. As I made my way home, I really thought about probably enlisting that day, but I still had the internship. And so I felt that let me finish this out, and then I'll make a decision about what I want to do. At the end of the internship, though, they offered me a full-time job. So I took that. I was excited. I enjoyed it. It was a very interesting time. I'd always been interested in politics, but especially around that time, you got to see a lot of really important people up on Capitol Hill. And again, I loved working in IT. So I stayed for the next 3 years doing that. And while I enjoyed it, I still had that sense that I needed to join the military, that I needed to serve in uniform, that sense of duty. And so in August of 2004, I joined the United States Marine Corps. Not everybody in my family was happy about that. My father flew in the Navy, so he didn't like me joining trains. And my grandfather served in World War II. And I remember him calling me one night and telling me how proud he was. And then calling me the next morning and say, hey, don't do this. So it's not a, so, but I joined, and I was stationed in 29 Palms, California, where for the next year we would train. And then in July of 2005, we deployed to the center of Iraq to a city called Fallujah. And so I had been gone through training as a machine gunner. And so I spent 6 months there doing convoy operations and other missions in the city and then the surrounding areas. And so I was on top of the Humvee. And when we were going through the city, one of the main attacks that they were using against us was roadside bombs or improvised explosive devices. So what that is they set up an explosive on the side of the road, and then as you pass, they detonate it. And we'd been dealing with those the entire time I was there. But then on December 31st, New Year's Eve, 2005, we were returning from a mission when a roadside bomb was detonated right next to my Humvee that I was on. So I was initially knocked out, but what happened when the bomb exploded, shrapnel went into the back of my head, and then a large chunk entered my helmet and smashed it in. Now, the helmet kept the shrapnel out of my head, but the hit was so hard that I had a massive wound on the top of my head. And so when I woke up, I was just in excruciating pain. And with the traumatic brain injury, it was hard for me to understand exactly what was going on. My driver was able to pull me out of the Humvee, and from what I have talked to him about, basically all I was saying, when he would try to chat with me is, my head hurts, my head hurts. I mean, I was accurate, but it was extremely scary. I mean, I'm laying there, you can't understand fully what's going on, and I'm putting my hand up to my head, and just more and more blood is just coming out. And as I'm laying there, again, I couldn't really put thoughts together. I remember just saying, Jesus, help. And then from there, laying there, I felt I was dying. I thought that was pretty much it. As bad as things looked at that moment, things started kind of going in the right direction. Our Navy corpsman, our medic that was with us on the convoy, was able to get to me and slow the bleeding. And then we were able to rush to the American medical facility in the area, Camp Fallujah, where they put me out, and I was flown to another place called Balad, Iraq, where I would be given a craniotomy. So they took off half the side of my skull, drained out the blood, and then put it back and fixed it down with titanium. So now I have a 10.5-inch scar on my head in the shape of a J. So it's J for John. And from there, I was flown to a place called Landstuhl, Germany. I went out on New Year's Eve in one continent, woke up New Year's Day in a completely unexpected continent. So clearly I'd had a adventure over the evening. But I woke up there in the ICU. I wasn't able to move very well, and it's still, with the traumatic brain injury, very difficult to process what everybody was telling me and what was going on. After about 3 or 4 days, they were able to stabilize me enough to allow me to be flown home. And growing up in the Northern Virginia area was great because they took me to Bethesda, now called Walter Reed, but my family was able to meet me there that night. And just so you know what kind of family I have, as much of a shock as it was that, I was almost killed, my oldest brother, Rich, took a picture of my other brother, Greg, pretending to lick my head. So this is the type of background. I love my family. So being in the hospital in the condition I was, it was still trying to figure out everything that had happened, but I started feeling, very guilty, ashamed that I had been wounded, sad that I had left all my friends. I felt that I had abandoned them, and just didn't really want to do anything. There was a couple days where I was just very, very down. And one day I was in my hospital bed when a Navy corpsman from another unit, he wheeled himself into my room, and I could see that he had lost both his legs. And he comes up, introduces himself to me, and he says, "Is there anything I can do to help you? Do you need anything? Are they taking care of you?" And that was like a light switch. It was an immediate change. I no longer thought I could feel sorry for myself. If this person is asking me if I need help from them, from there on, I started my recovery process. I think that was really the thing that did it. I'd be up at the hospital for the next year or so, mostly as an outpatient, but I do 2 surgeries, 1 plastic to make me handsome, and multiple rounds of physical therapy, because it was not only learning to walk, but then learning to walk without a cane. And then at one point they had me walking backwards on a treadmill and they'd throw things at me. So some of it was fun. But then also cognitive therapy, a lot of sessions of that, as well as lots of group therapy sessions with the other Marines. And I think that was really important. During this time, I'm starting to realize, okay, my time in the Marine Corps is coming to an end. I need to start figuring out what I'm going to do next. I still had those learning disabilities with me. On top of that, now I have traumatic brain injury. Do I really want to go to college? I didn't think so, but my family, especially my mother, talked me into going, and I had the GI Bill. So about 2 weeks before I left the Marine Corps, I started at Northern Virginia Community College. Everybody knows it as Nova. And the first semester, I took about 12 to 18 credits, I think, and I got straight A's. So I was very encouraged by that. I think a lot of the resilience and discipline that I got from the Marine Corps helped me start doing well. And so I continued on. I was given another opportunity to work on Capitol Hill at a different committee with somebody I really respected. So I jumped at that opportunity, even though it really slowed down my progress with the school. Now I was only going to school at night, so it probably added another 4 or 5 years. But eventually, when I finished up at Nova, trying to figure out where I was going to go to finish up my bachelor's, I just happened to see an email about the UVA BIS degree program. And I am so thankful I saw that email. I responded immediately. I was past the deadline, but they worked with me. And within, I think, the end of the month or so, I was enrolled and ready to go. And the next semester I started at UVA. And I cannot tell you how incredible my experience was here. I loved the classes, some more than others. I love the people that I went with, especially my friends, Tim, Lori, Tucker, Jorge. And it was just such an incredible experience. I came down to grounds to Charlottesville as often as I could, even though I was mostly in Northern Virginia. And one of the best things that I did was I was able to talk my friend Tim into going on a study abroad to Germany. And we were actually there over New Year's. And I can tell you this trip, I had a lot better time over New Year's than I did my first one in the SEU. And so from there, doing my capstone and finishing up at UVA, I was so proud of what I had accomplished. And I had that confidence. And I took that, and a few years after finishing at UVA, I went over to George Mason and got my MBA. And then because I'd worked in IT for so long, I got my Master's of Information Technology from Harvard. So completely done with school now. I will not be going back unless anybody has an in for law school. But anyway, thank you. Those are some events that really shaped my life. And I mean, you heard the challenges I faced, the learning disabilities, the setbacks, the injuries, the long recoveries. But I took it one day at a time, one day at a time. And, I think I found something meaningful in life. And so thank you again for listening to my story. Yes.
Thank you, Don. So now I'd like to call Catherine hands up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kathy, and I'm a student in the post-bac medical program. Like all of my peers in the program who are on the non-traditional pathway to healthcare, I at first did not want to pursue a career in medicine. I was an international studies major and a Russian studies major, and I was dead set on working in the foreign service and becoming a diplomat. Growing up, I never lived in the same place for longer than 3 to 4 years. I was moving constantly between different states and overseas in Thailand, and to be okay with not having a stable place to call a hometown, I prioritized making connections with people I met everywhere that I lived. And I made sure I made connections and found similarities with people that I made friends with. And I loved how no matter where I was and no matter the background of the people I made friends with, I'm sorry, this is so repetitive, that we were all the same and had common humanity. And so that inspired me to pursue a political path in which I can use that understanding to make a positive change in the world. And so when the opportunity came for me to study abroad in St. Petersburg, Russia, the spring semester of my junior year, I pounced on it. I wanted to go so badly, and I was dreaming of diplomacy. So before I knew it, I was on the plane to St. Petersburg, and in February of 2022. So the first few weeks of that study abroad, it was really amazing. My classroom was in the Hermitage Museum, which has the world's largest collection of paintings. And every day was a new adventure where I got to travel with my classmates to an Orthodox cathedral, or really test the limits of how much a Russian McDonald's can put mayonnaise in hamburgers. But before we knew it, everything just completely changed all of a sudden. Morning of February 24th is when I will never forget. I woke up with my phone buzzing just nonstop from a slew of text messages from my friends and family who were concerned out of their minds. Confused, I was just looking through my notifications until my heart stopped when I read the breaking news of Putin's announcement of the special military operation in eastern Ukraine and the explosions that were happening in Kiev. And so the moment I stepped out of my host mom's apartment, I could instantly feel the electric undercurrent that was rippling through the city. It was almost as if like the whole of St. Petersburg was holding its breath in shock. Everyone wanted to know what was happening, like, why is this happening? What's going on? What's going to happen in the next few days? And then by the evening, St. Petersburg was completely different. There were armed military vehicles going down the street. The sidewalks were flooded with military police. And at that point, the US Embassy in Moscow were sending out a slew of emails saying, because of the Russian government, you're not going to be able to provide a lot of aid if you guys get into an emergency situation. So you guys better stay out of any protests or and avoid any conflict. As the days went on, I saw thousands of people protesting against the war and thousands of people getting arrested. The Russian ruble crashed, and I lay in bed every night listening to my host mom cry over the phone because her family was in Ukraine and she didn't know what was going to happen to them. And so as time went on, I really began to realize how the invasion not only separated and divided nations, but it separated the people and the societies within them. I saw that in Russia, that people were starting to categorize themselves as pro-Putin, anti-Putin, or Russian and non-Russian. And me as an American who was very anti-war, I felt that it was best to minimize my presence out on the streets just for my own safety. I felt isolated and I felt silent, and I did not trust the US Embassy was going to help me out at all. In the foreign policy aspect, I was discouraged that the US Embassy couldn't really do anything regarding Putin's decision. And so in real time, I was able to see the limitations of the diplomacy and the system I used to want to be so badly a part of. So to make ourselves feel better, my friends and I decided to go to bars because like that's what you do. And so that bar trip was a really pivotal moment for me in changing, wanting to go into foreign policy and then going into healthcare for two reasons. One, when I was at the bar, I cut my finger really badly. And two, when I was at the bar, I also got COVID. So in the first instance, when I went to the bar, my friends and I would just stay in a corner, just kind of avoiding everybody, just keeping to ourselves. And then for a few drinks in, I don't know why, I stuck my finger inside of a beer can. And I twisted my finger. I don't know why. I didn't even realize what was happening. Nobody saw like the blood that was streaming down my arm until the group of young Russians who were sitting right next to us stood up and said something. They said, "Hello, you're bleeding," in Russian. And then they ran to the bar. One of them got paper towels for me to stem the bleeding. Another one ran to buy me a shot of vodka. And as they were helping patch up my finger, all of the perceived boxes and barriers I saw that were between people kind of melted away as my injury allowed, was a gate that allowed for the two groups of us to start conversing with each other. They were interested in why we were studying in Russia. I was interested in their jobs, their livelihood. And so that was really the first time since the invasion where I was able to have that cross-cultural, interpersonal connection that I had cherished since I was young. And then the second instance, a few days after that bar, I was feeling ridiculously ill. I don't know what strain of COVID had manifested itself as it made its way around Russia, but even though I had 2 shots of the Pfizer vaccine, that did not feel good. And the directors of the program had to contact the nearby hospital to send a nurse to take care of me at my host mom's apartment. And the second the nurse went into the room, she was exuding a lot of kindness and care. And just like in the bar, her being Russian and me being a foreigner did not come between us at all. She was the nurse and I was the patient that she wanted to care for. And while she was there taking care of me, asking me questions, taking my temperature, getting my PCR test, and just asking me about my day and how my life was, I was feeling a real sense of comfort and normalcy, even though I also felt like I was going to die. And then I was also super inspired by how, despite the constant feeling of kind of darkness that came with the ever-present economic turmoil and the political oppression that was going on outside, inside that room, it was just me and her, and she just wanted to make me feel better. And so after we left the country and we came home, which was a huge shock, it was just juxtaposition going from Russia back to America. I was able to reflect on my time. I still loved the people and the language and the culture, but I was completely disillusioned by foreign policy at that point. But then I thought about those moments in the bar and with the nurse, and those were really just the bright spots in the darkness of the invasion. I realized that I wanted to be that person to other people who's able to help someone, whoever they are, whatever they believed in, whatever the craziness going on in the world, and have the ability to help them. And that's why I pivoted towards medicine and why I applied to the postdoctoral medical program. Thank you.
All right, now I'd like to call up Taylor Terraskers and Patrick Watson.
Thank you. I'm Patrick Watson. I'm Taylor Tereskers. We both kind of have similar backgrounds. We're asked to speak together. My career is kind of manifested from one event when I was younger. I was about 14 years old and was awoken in the middle of the night, 2 or so in the morning, into this bright glow outside my window, and then a sudden glass shattering and smoke alarms going off. And the next thing you know is by 6 a.m., everything that you owned is gone. We lost everything in a house fire in the middle of the night. Luckily, we all were able to get out safely, but it was a pretty traumatic experience. And so at that point in my life, I had no idea, no direction where I wanted to go. And I was still young. I didn't have to figure it out quite yet. But as I went through high school, I still kind of couldn't get over that. And so the only thing I knew that I didn't like what happened to me and wanted to do anything that I could to prevent that from happening to somebody else. So as soon as I was allowed to, I was a junior member, joined the local fire department. Couldn't even run calls yet. I was just washing fire trucks and helping raise money. But as soon as I could get on a fire truck, I did. And we were a first responder EMS fire department. And with the fires, you go and you put out a fire and somebody else loses their home. You weren't seeing like a huge impact there. But with EMS, it was different. You got to interface with people and understand what their problem is and then try to help them and get them to the hospital. And sometimes a week later, they'd come by the fire department and come chat with you and thank you for what you had done. And I really enjoyed that. So I took more of a turn from the fire service to healthcare and to EMS and got my EMT certification and then quickly joined a rescue squad and started transporting and responding to these calls. And so then when I graduated high school, that's kind of the only thing that I really knew. And I felt like if I went to a 4-year degree institution, that I probably would end up just dropping out, wasting a bunch of money. And so I said, well, I'll go to school, I'll get a part-time job and, just kind of figure out things as it goes. So I got hired with the UVA Health Medical Transport Network, working just part-time and going to school at Piedmont, Virginia Community College. And quickly, within 6 or so months, I was offered a full-time position with a critical care position at UVA, transporting neonates around the state of Virginia and with the newborn emergency transport team. So I didn't feel that that was something I could turn down, and against my parents' wishes, I took a full-time job and dropped out of school. And then now you get, then life happens. You get married, you have a couple of kids, and 20 years later, you're like, man, I kind of regret not going to school. And so it's a big burden in front of you that you can't really get over. And there was a program that UVA offered, UVA Edge, and it seemed like that would really help kind of maybe get me over this fear and anxiety of going back to school. I'm 40, I would not fit in. Well, everyone was just like me, and with the same fears and the same, concerns. And so that was my introduction into UVA and the School of Continuing Professional Studies. So, from there, I completed the Edge program, the second cohort, got some extra credits from Piedmont, and then now I've transferred back in where I'm completing my bachelor's in healthcare management through the School of Continuing Professional Studies. That is my background, and where I continue to volunteer with Taylor here as well as a paramedic with the Western Animal Rescue Squad.
And he is a deputy chief. So I was born and raised here. We've been Wahoos through and through. My mom went here 4 times. My sister went here. My dad went here. And I can tell you, I knew very early on, me going through high school, and my grades weren't bad, but I was not necessarily going straight out of high school to here. I didn't necessarily have the grades for that. And being a high school kid, I can tell you my interest when I graduated was not necessarily going right back to school again. So I got into EMS when I was 16 and at the Western Animal Rescue Squad with him, where I've been able to work my way up to a captain on Friday nights. It's been about 14 or 15 years now. And sort of some of the events that shaped me, me and my sister worked very hard to get where she was. My mother did the same. My dad and I were very similar in the path that he wasn't very interested in going to college when he got out of high school. And then he was sent to Vietnam, that he was drafted. And that's sort of where he told me that, it took getting shot at. He's like, I should probably come back and get my education to kind of get out of this. And I did not get deployed or join any service, but I sort of took the roundabout way like he did. And I started at PDCC here in town. And he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer about a month into going to Piedmont. And I was also, which probably wasn't wise on my part, that I was taking classes there, working in a restaurant, and then I actually started working part-time here. And I can tell you that the lights and sirens and going fast and the adrenaline and all that kind of stuff was way more interesting than what I was learning at Piedmont. It took a real long time to finish that associate's. Thankfully, I did, made my transition here a little bit easier. My dad was given about 3 to 6 months to live when he was told, and for those of you who know, it's not a great prognosis. It actually went on for 4 years that we got treatment, or that he took chemo treatments. That transitioned after a couple of years. Ended up going to the National Institute of Health, that he was in a clinical trial. We made that trek to Bethesda. So pretty much my scholastic career at that point, my priorities were family, and fire rescue was definitely a lot more of my interest at the time. And it still is. I learned a lot in the home care aspect, and like how much can be done in the home, how much more convenient that it is in the home, and what it means to the families and the patients that kind of go through that. And with EMS, I'm sure Patrick can vouch for this as well, that you do feel like you make a difference. And then after a while, you kind of can feel like you're beating your head against the wall when you take the same people over and over and over for the same kind of same problems. And once my dad did pass away in 2018, it was about a year or two later that I saw an email from here, and I've always wanted to be a Wahoo. That's, I really didn't have any interest in going anywhere else, and I wasn't planning on it until I got that email. And I couldn't believe that I was admitted here, to be quite frank with you. I skated by it. But I know I've had a passion for EMS. I know I've had a passion for helping people. And when I saw they have a healthcare management field, just the field experience and trying to couple that with a degree would be wonderful. So that's what I did. I couldn't believe I got in. And that actually was perfect timing that I started working with him full time in the population health department. And before was working at special events here, the football, basketball, hockey field, all those kinds of things. And we were helping people by phone, and community paramedicine is a program that we were lucky enough that he and I, you get to work with, your best friend every day. It's very lucky. And we were given, we were given the reins to create this program where we go on an appointment basis and see our patients to keep them out of the hospital, which once you've woken up at 3 a.m. enough for the same person, you love that work so much. And I'll let him talk a little bit more about that and how the school has really helped us to really develop that whole program.
Yeah, it's great. Professor Erath is here, provided a lot of guidance when we started this program 2 years ago, and looking up some like HRSA tools and how to collect data, how to prove our worth, what we don't know how a CFO thinks. And so having somebody with that knowledge that could provide the guidance was very instrumental to really getting us off the ground. And we've made a significant impact in the community, reducing ER visits with the patients that we see, like by 72%, literally going to the ER like 8 times in a 30 or 90-day window, and reducing that down to maybe once, if at all, and once they complete our program. And that's a huge impact. The ERs are busy, they're overrun. There's a lot of patients waiting to be admitted. And so it's kind of a bogged down. And so it comes to a major cost savings to healthcare systems. And we've been fortunate enough, and the timing just kind of merged perfectly with their classes. When you literally work for population health, and then your first class in your degree pattern is population health, and you go, I know something about it. It's phenomenal, and I feel like we're on the very edge in leading, the healthcare industry.
Thank you guys very much.
So now I would like to call up DeAndre Ryan.
Good evening, everybody. My name is DeAndre, and I want to preface by saying that my chest is pounding right now. Then y'all know that I literally got the notification on my watch, right? But almost intentionally didn't really prepare a particular story for today, because in talking to Susanna, I told her verbatim, my life feels like a big collage that is all come together to make one beautiful picture, honestly. And I'm just gonna do my best to be able to take y'all through the sequence of events that ultimately put me here in front of y'all today. But to say it was full circle is an understatement, honestly. So much. But I'm born and raised here in Charlottesville, like yourself, and I like to always mention that I actually grew up being able to hear Scott Stadium from my house. That was a pretty big deal for me because I grew up a big football fan, and sports was always also a major part of my life. My dad had played in college, and he would make sure I do things, like do 100 push-ups every night, and all the whole jazz of that type of work ethic that really instilled a lot in me. And one of the funny things he also did was also made my childhood very carpet green. to make sure it resembled a football field. So all signs really showed that football was going to be the thing that I ended up doing. Honestly, I was a pretty good player, and went on to have a pretty successful career despite my father passing away at the age of 11. I had a great support system. I really do want to loop in the fact it's going to make sense later. But I had a praying grandmother. Her name literally is Charlotte Virginia Brown. And let's fast forward a little bit. I'm sorry. It's gonna be a lot. But I actually even recall in the midst of me being in college, and she was in hospice care at UVA. She had so many people visiting her because they knew it was her time to leave. And staff quite literally asked us, is she famous? I kid you not, she was retired since the age of 40. And didn't do much, but go to church every Sunday, but just was such an example spiritually for so many people in the neighborhood that it left a great inspiration, a great impact. And it did a lot for my life that I still did not realize until years later, and I'll get there. But going back, went on through high school, had a pretty good football career. Socially, I was well respected for my character and all kind of things like that, and was able to win homecoming king and follow in the footsteps of my older brother. A lot of things that felt cool at the time, if I'm being honest. And graduating high school, I say I felt on top of the world, honestly. I was a hometown kid from Charlottesville. I was going to go play football at UVA. And a lot of people, you know, a lot of people like that. I got a lot of support for that. And it felt good, but it still was a level of emptiness that I couldn't really explain. But I did feel on top of the world, but I will say a lot of that left when I got to UVA. Not only just because UVA was hard, but also I was really trying to balance a lot in my time here. I wanted to make sure I was active in the community. I visited my high school often to be able to mentor kids. I lost my train of thought there. Sorry. But I was able to be a good, I wanted to be a good mentor. I wanted to have a role in the football team, and also, of course, be a good student. And balancing all that was very hard. And I'll say there's three major life events that happened in Mr. College that really impacted a lot of that. Number one was when I injured my knee. It was the first time in my life I couldn't physically move to a location on my own power. And for some reason that changed my entire paradigm. In many ways, in a bad way, if I'm being honest. I became a bit of a short-tempered person, and I was somewhat angered because what I thought I was kind of put on the earth to do quickly became to a reality that it might not happen. Even though despite I wasn't having a ton of success within the football program as far as getting on the field, that it served as a coping mechanism for me. It was my outlet. Any level of emotional distress I had, I let it out on the football field, and I used it for that. Another event that happened in Mr. College was August 12th, August 11th in particular. I got a phone call from my mother and my stepfather that they were actually locked inside of the church in the midst of me being in fall camp by the events that are going on. They were surrounded by people with flaming torches. They said, I couldn't understand what was going on, if I'm being honest. But it bothered me a bit, and it pushed me that much more to be in the community, but also made it that much harder to be a good student and a good football player. The third event is my grandmother passing, which I hinted at earlier. And that really had an impact on me because I grew up with my grandmother being in the house all my life. And I got back from school, she would be the person I talked to for 3 hours and watch Food Network with and watch the gospel channel, Jeopardy, all the whole nine. And that was a very stressful experience. But I say after getting through all that and graduating, I gained a bit of confidence back. And I say again, I felt like I was on top of the world. But since it was UVA this time, I say I felt like I was on top of the galaxy, if I'm being honest. And there was a fundamental flaw in the way I thought, if I'm being honest. I gave myself all the credit. There was a lot of very unique and coincidental things that happened in my life from start to finish that for some reason I thought it was a result of my hard work and my work ethic. And a lot of what I was fed taught me that that was the right mindset to have and that you should be confident, prideful, and go attack these things. But I was missing something. And I want to just skip to a piece of my life that helped me realize what it was I was missing. Fast forward after college, a bit of that mindset kind of reflected a lot of my personal decisions, professional decisions too. I built up some bad debt and probably spent time with people that weren't probably the best for me to be around, and done a lot of things that I didn't realize at the time were pulling me from what God had for me. But the moment I want to get to with all of this is January 7th, 2024. January 7th, 2024 is I was actually visiting Atlanta with my girlfriend sitting right in the back for my brother's birthday. And he briefly mentioned that he wanted to make sure we went to church on Sunday. And I grew up in a church and grew up around praying people, but I can't say I was ever really devoted to Christ in my life. And we walked inside of this church the next morning, and almost instantly I felt something come over me that superseded anything I'd ever felt in my life before. What I now know to be the Holy Spirit. And I can easily say that day will serve as a projection for, as a trajectory for the rest of my life. Quickly after that, I got home or got back to my brother's house, and I felt urged to fast immediately. Kind of everybody was eating, and something biblical you do is fast in order to kill your flesh to get closer to God. And I tried my best to take that on for 7 days, and the subsequent 2-3 months afterwards, I'm diving into the Bible in a way that I never have in my entire life. And it's made me realize quickly I was missing this paradigm that really helped me to understand my life and also helped me understand what it is I'm put here for. And at this time, I spent time being an operations manager at a small scale therapy center and selling insurance, but I still didn't quite know what it was that I really should have been doing. And I recall the day that my girlfriend is right in the back. She felt a moment of something coming over her and mentioned, I don't know why, but you need to just say yes to whatever comes next. And no more than 48 hours later, I was getting a text from my friend that coached football. Hey, we need somebody to come help the defense. And I was very reluctant, but given the divine feeling of it, I reluctantly said yes. And little by little, month by month, over the subsequent this time, I quickly realized that this is really what God had called me to do. It just served as the vehicle for me to be able to touch lives, football that is, versus for me to be able to just go play in front of people and make good money. And that was a big revelation for me. And yeah, um, the full circle moment I want to get to is no more than just 3 or 4 days ago. Um, I had learned a small detail about the person that actually invited me to speak at this event, um, Cyrus Webb. And I only emailed this guy throughout my time at UVA School of Continuing Professional Studies, but I felt a connection to him. And man, um, it's just crazy thing. I'm getting emotional even thinking about it, but this feels full circle completely. But um, yeah, I found out literally that this guy was coaching alongside me track and field at Western Oregon High School, the same high school I coached at the entire time. And I had no clue this guy was watching me or knew that I was doing what I was doing and inspiring kids and whatnot and things like that. And it just serves me as a big reminder. It's like, man, you never know who's watching you. You never know where God can lead you. And again, forgive me if this is getting random. It feels like a big collage, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, it just was a major moment for me. And also recently I started getting into car sales. And more than 2 weeks ago, I started at the dealership. And another decision that I felt like God set up for me to do, because I studied cybersecurity with UVA SCPS, and I thought that that's where I was headed. But very quickly, just upon starting at the dealership, I could see and feel that like this is actually where I need to be once again. And yeah, I got major confirmation yesterday of that. So this is why everything feels very fresh and raw right now. One of the executives of Flow Automotives visited the dealership yesterday and stopped me in my tracks. And I didn't know who he was from Adam, honestly, but quickly mentioned himself. And he mentioned that his son plays at Western Oregon High School, and I coached him. And my jaw just dropped instantly. It's not just that, but he also mentioned his son is really inspired by me and looks up to me and looks forward to me coming back to coach there next season. And it just felt like a moment of just wow, because ultimately the message I want to leave with here today is just sometimes we can be so fixated on what it is that we want to do in our respective lives. And I just want to be blunt and just saying that you really should lean I feel like everybody should lean into God and really discover what it is that He wants you to do, and not yourself. Because promise, once you make that decision, you will find some of the most fulfillment you will ever find in your life. And I'm learning that in real time as I stand here today. And literally, as I finish speaking, I'm going right back to the dealership to do what I've just already been doing today. So, yes, that's my story, and I hope that makes sense. And thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, now Paige Garziola.
Go put your feet in the water. No, seriously, go and put your feet in the water. Trust me. So picture this. I'm in Norway. It's the summer of 2022. And this is the Arctic Circle. So this season of time, we're experiencing something called the midnight sun. The midnight sun just means that you have sunlight 24 hours a day. And it really fills you with this energy and thirst for life that I can't really get in another way. And I was in Norway a little bit after the end of the season, so we only had sun 23 and a half hours a day. But it was really quite magical, especially the way the sun would come down and into the fjords, and it would kind of like sing a magical song to you. I don't know how else to describe that. And I was in this unique part of the world because I was doing some military training operations. And during the season in my military career, I was having a pretty difficult time. The December before that, we had a death in my unit. One of my very close friends was dealing with a difficult mental health diagnosis, and we had deployed to Europe about 3 weeks after the invasion of Ukraine. It was a stressful time to be in Europe. My military training was being put to the test in a lot of different ways, and I was having a really hard time being away from my family. But this afternoon, I had a few hours off, which was very rare, and I wanted to get some food that was different from the mess hall food. And this chief I was working with, he and I heard about a Thai food truck, and I felt that I really needed to try Norwegian Thai food. So we were off driving down this windy road in the Arctic Circle country of Norway, and we pull off the side of the road into this parking lot where the Norwegian Thai food was. And the chief hopped out of the car, and I was just kind of sitting in the passenger seat, not in any rush. And I looked across to the other side of the road. I saw about 10 feet of greenery, a small spot of sand and rocks, and some waves coming in gently and landing. And then I heard a voice in the back of my mother's voice, by the way. And she said, "Go put your feet in the water, Paige." And I had at least 10 reasons why I was not going to do that. 1, the sand. 2, the cold. And 3, the cold sand. And besides that, I really was not interested in explaining to this chief I had just met why I needed to stand on the side of the road in the water. But my mom's voice just got louder, as it does. I was trying to ignore it, which is impossible, by the way. And she goes, "Go put your feet in the water." And I obviously was going to do this because my mom's always right. And I rolled my eyes, though, because I'm a firstborn daughter and that's what we do. And I got out of the car, ran across the road, took my shoes off, my socks off, rolled up my pants, waded into the water, and I took a picture of my feet wiggling just below the surface. I sent it to my family group chat, captioned, "Put my feet in the water in the Arctic Circle." And I feel as though for most families, this would be a strange text to receive. But in my family, I was greeted with yay and heart emojis and excitement meeting excitement. And if you look at my 10-year career in the military, you see really hundreds of pictures of my feet. And they're in every body of water I've ever been near. The Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Arabian Sea, the Philippine Sea, rivers in the Swiss Alps, and even more that I can't even name off the top of my head. And if you asked me where this tradition started, I could not tell you. But one thing I do know is that it came from my mother. My mom, who believed that kindness and happiness are true success over collecting accolades. My mom, who grew up an only child and had spent her life creating a family outside of traditional blood relationships. And my mom, who always makes us take our shoes off on the beach and walk through the water. And over my career in the military, being away from my family, the act of sending each other these pictures has served as an anchor to myself, to tradition, and to my family. So, when the world is feeling a little heavy, and when time feels too tight, and you feel like you've lost yourself in the doing, go put your feet in the water. No, seriously, go and put your feet in the water and let it remind you who you are. Let it remind you who's with you. And let it remind you that there's still beauty, still joy, and still time if you make it. Thank you.
All right, so our last student, alumni speaker is Frank Carpenter, and he could not be here today. So thank you, Christophe. We are going to beam him in through a video that he prepared to share. So.
Greetings. My name is Frank Carpenter, and I want to talk with you about opportunities. 1969. Hold that year. We'll come back to it. As long as I can remember, I've been surrounded by men and women who have committed themselves to service. I want to speak specifically about my dad, who served in the United States Air Force for over 25 years, and my uncles, who were my mother's brothers, who served in their communities for over 25 and 30 years. You see, those were the first examples of service in my life, and they were what I patterned my life after going forward. You know, when I think about life with my father and my mom, you know, they had an opportunity, and their opportunity shifted when my father enlisted in the United States military. See, it allowed us an opportunity to travel abroad, to meet people from different countries, different ideals and spaces. It allowed me to connect with people that I probably never would have come in contact with. The opportunity to change his family's life, to change his own personal life, was afforded to him. And my uncles, who served their communities in the 70s, the early 70s, which it wasn't real popular to have people like me serving in that capacity. So they were great examples and role models, not only to me, but to their community. And, you know, I looked at them as a young child as superheroes and, you know, desired one day to serve in either capacity. So moving fast forward, my father, he was stationed in the DC metro area, which I grew up the majority of my life in that community. And this was in the early 80s. For those that may be familiar, 80s, we were plagued with the drug crack cocaine that destroyed many communities around the country. But specifically in my community, in the DC metro area, Maryland in particular, you know, it impacted a lot of people's lives. And I saw families being destroyed because of the introduction of crack cocaine into those communities. I had friends who were negatively impacted, whether that was victims of crime or whether that was imprisonment, or the fact that their families were just, you know, destroyed totally. But I was fortunate and I was blessed enough to be gifted to play the sport of football. And it kept me out of those spaces and away from those interactions. And I excelled. I excelled at a high level at the middle school level and a high level at the high school level. And, you know, it afforded me an opportunity to go to college. But what I didn't realize at the time was I would be the first in my entire family to attend college athletically and academically. Opportunity. While I was in college, you know, I took advantage of the education component, but not only that, I participated in Reserve Officer Training Corps, and eventually upon graduation, I was commissioned as a lieutenant in the United States Army. Opportunity. What I didn't realize was that, you know, I also would be the first in my family to actually graduate from college. Opportunity. But I really found out my why while I was there. And I recognized that, you know, everything that had taken place in my life really centered around opportunities, and I wanted to now give back. And that giving back was in the form of serving my community. I recognized that, you know, the work that needed to be done was hard work, but necessary work. And so I found my niche, and that turned out to be narcotics investigations. I realized I was really good at it. And at some point in time, for an example, we're going to use the name Joe Lanou, last name unknown. Joe Lanou ended up on my radar And during the course of my investigation, I realized Joe Lanou was unique in the sense that, he really wasn't your typical narcotics distributor. He had a family, he had a home, he had a car. He was committed to a job where he worked pretty much 9 to 5, and he would not deviate from family time or his commitment to his employment. It wasn't until the closure of this investigation that I realized how unique Mr. Lanou was. I realized that he was not your typical narcotics distributor. When we executed a search warrant on Mr. Lanou's residence, we were greeted by his wife, whose eyes were filled with tears, his children, who were in shock, and no one knew that Mr. Lanou was distributing narcotics to supplement his income. But an opportunity presented itself, and Mr. Lanou was able to help himself out and change his life, and for the better, became a better version of himself. You see, what ultimately ended up happening was, he went on to have a great life with his family and children. But every once in a while, I get a note from Mr. Lanou thanking me for the opportunity. And that's when I realized, how important opportunities are for people. We can't always look at everybody with the same lens and say that, because they're doing ABC 1, 2, 3, that they don't deserve an opportunity. Mr. Lanou deserved that opportunity. And I'm grateful that I was able to help him help himself. So, as we go forward, I start thinking, truly, what is life really about? It's about opportunities. It's opportunities and grace. And 1969, I want to circle back on that now, which was really interesting because that's the year that I was born. And what I didn't tell you was that my dad is from a small town close to Charlottesville called Madison County. And my mom is from a small town close to Charlottesville called Orange County. And wouldn't you know it, I was born at the University of Virginia Hospital back in 1969. And this is such a surreal moment for me because, 3 or 4 years ago, I had an opportunity to go back to school to get my graduate degree from the University of Virginia. The Master's in Public Safety program was a tremendous asset to my life, a blessing. It provided so many doors to be open in my life, even my current position. When I realized that, I was going to have this opportunity to speak with you, once again, opportunity, I had such a surreal moment that it doesn't really matter how you start off. It's about what you do during the course of the journey and the opportunities that are presented before you. So I ask you to remember that opportunities are important, and whenever possible, afford them to everyone you come in contact with. Thank you.
Wow, what an experience. Thank you. Please join me in another round of applause. So just a few words of closure. So I have just like a minute to speak and I have notes and they didn't have any notes. Everything that they said, so. But I do want to just say some thank yous first to each of you for being here and for sharing your hearts and your mind and your spirit and your experiences. And it was really moving. Thank you. Thank you for I also would like to say thank you to Matt Weber. He's out of the president's office, and he is the one that worked with many of you who spoke today and who really helped us pull this event together, and I appreciate that. Also, Susanna Fuller and Melissa Reichert. The communications going, and I saw we had over 30 people on line zooming in, and we had close to 50 here today, so that's wonderful for our first event. So that's pretty exciting. Well done. over there. Also our IT team, Christoph, you had me before. May come up. I knew we were great. Thank you. And Dave, there too. So our tech team and their expertise of making sure everything flowed. And of course, the recording and all that is wonderful. Also, in the Dean Suite with Michelle Palmazanita. Do I see Michelle? She's done now. Rachel and our fantastic facilities team, Jeff and Mike and George. So thank you for getting everything. And last but not least, I really want to say thank you to President Ryan. If you have not seen his double take, I encourage you to watch it. It's amazing. And so this whole event, these series of events that we've been having in double take, were really inspired by President Ryan. And when I was interviewing for my position, I've been here 2.5 years, and I knew I was going to be interviewing with President Ryan. I Googled him, and up came his double take. And it is 10 minutes or less of an amazing, amazing personal journey. So I encourage you to watch that, of him sharing himself when he first came here as president in 2018. So with that said, please join us for reception and networking and talking and sharing your own stories with each other. And again, if you would like a tour of upstairs, I'm happy to help do that. And for any of you that would like to see our space upstairs, but let's have some drinks and food and good connections with each other. Thanks again for being here.